Attacks happen fast in the cloud. 10 minutes, that's all it takes. So as they become increasingly sophisticated, security teams need to address risks at cloud speed. That means 5 seconds to detect, 5 minutes to triage, and 5 minutes to respond to threats. But with so much noise, so many alerts, and so little time, how can you keep up? You need cloud security powered by runtime insights. And Sysdig's cloud-native application protection platform unifies your security capabilities from prevention to detection. And in this demo, we'll go through the Sysdig platform and why this unified approach is just so powerful. First, we'll cover the important domain of cloud security posture management and dive deeper into securing cloud identities. Then container security and cloud workload protection. We'll then go through vulnerability management and show you how runtime insights can drastically reduce vulnerability noise. And finally, we'll demonstrate the power of real-time cloud detection and response to protect against the speed of cloud attacks. We'll start our journey from the new risk page in Sysdig. It prioritizes all your riskiest findings so you can harden your defense. Sysdig performs multi-domain correlation of in-use permissions, vulnerabilities, public exposure, misconfigurations, and most importantly, live events that may be a sign of compromise. Now let's analyze some of these risks. Here we have an EC2 instance, widely open to the internet. It's vulnerable, and some of its configurations have drifted. As we zoom in, we can view a list of the impacted resources. Each resource has its own findings that can be visualized using the attack path. This EC2 instance is publicly exposed. It has an IAM role with excessive unused permissions that leads to a privilege access S3 bucket. We have all the configurations that made it available on the internet. The network interface is assigned a public IP address. The security group has open ports. The subnet is associated with a network ACL that has open ports. The route table has a route leading to an internet gateway, and finally, we have the internet gateway connected to the VPC. On the other side, there is a critical vulnerability. Its significance to this risk lies in its attack vector being network-based, indicating that the vulnerability could be exploited remotely from the internet. Additionally, Sysdig detected a real-time drift in cloud configurations. A temporary SSH public key was uploaded to the EC2 instance, potentially indicating unauthorized lateral access. That's why this risk is considered critical, not just because it has a critical vulnerability, but because of the additional factors that elevate the risk, potentially leading to an S3 data breach. So the question we need to answer now, is this event a legitimate or malicious activity? From the event's details, we can get some information like the source IP address, and if we click on this one, we'll see whether someone flagged it as suspicious. We can also see the AWS user who triggered this activity, and it was done in the region US East 1. Now this is going to be very important to know as we tie that story from cloud down to the container level. If we mouse over this user, we'll find the permissions and policies that have been assigned. Here we have administrator access, Amazon EC2 full access. This user has overly permissive permissions, yet we still need to further investigate the user, event and time frame. So let's consult the events page. The events page records all activities. We can see if there are any spikes across the whole environment or even narrow it down to the AWS cloud events. Every event is tied to its category on the MITRE ATT&CK matrix, so we can click on the lateral movement category and see what could be correlated to the SSH event. This makes it easier to spot patterns or unusual activities. One of the patterns more recently has been how attackers are targeting identity and access management systems, impersonating users within the targeted organization. So part of our security playbook for these incidents is to investigate identity and access management events alongside the cloud events. All in one place, I can check Okta events and AWS events. For this timestamp, I can see some Okta events happened around the same time admin permission has been assigned to a user in Okta, a few minutes before the AWS incident. As we investigate this event, we can see the same username that was used to upload the SSH key. Taking everything into consideration, I believe this to be a malicious event, performed by a user whose identity was compromised, posing a critical risk. I will proceed next by right-sizing the permissions for that user to prevent further compromise. So let me show you how. First, we'll search our users, check the attached policies. On the left, we can see that over 95% of the given permissions are not used based on the observed behavior of identity access. This is excessive, so let's fix it. On the right, Sysdig recommends optimizing this policy by analyzing in-use permissions, meaning permissions that are actually used and required by this user to perform their daily tasks. Now we see the number of required permissions drop from 15,000 to 900. This allows for more granular control over what a user or service can do. Here we have a list of the suggested actions compared to the original ones, and finally open a Jira ticket to implement the necessary policy adjustments. Now let's navigate to another domain. This time we're dealing with a container, and what makes this risk different and unique is the live and in-use badges. Live means a critical runtime event was detected within the last 3 hours. In use means that the vulnerable package is already used in the container and loaded in memory. Moving quickly to the attack path, we discover that this workload has 4 different findings. It's exposed to the internet, it has insecure configurations, it has in-use vulnerabilities, and a high confidence live event. The insecure configuration is a container running as privileged. As we expand this finding, we're shown how to remediate this configuration and can even open a PR from Sysdig to fix this directly in the code. This integration streamlines the remediation process, ensuring that my containers run securely and in compliance with best practices. Next, we have a vulnerability. It's not critical, but it is in use, and based on the CVSS analysis, the privileges required is low, indicating that a regular user without any elevated privileges can exploit this vulnerability. Since this container is running with privileges, it implies that an ordinary user could potentially escape the container and begin moving laterally within my environment. But before rushing to patch this image, I just want to ensure that the vulnerability hasn't spread its roots deeper into our infrastructure. And this is where we consult the grand library of my ecosystem, Inventory. Inventory gives you instant visibility into your entire cloud estate and allows you to filter on any attribute, such as public exposure, posture violation, in use, and more. And at this moment, we can see over 27,000 resources that have been analysed. Let's start our query by searching for any resource that has a vulnerability. Okay, 302 vulnerable resources identified. Now let's filter by severity by selecting only those that are critical. 107. We can filter again for exploitability. Now we're down to 79. Is there a fix available? Still 79. Now let's look for packages in use, meaning it's an actively loaded package. Now we're down to 46. And finally, if we filter on public exposure, we're now down to 2. We've gone from 300 vulnerable resources down to 2. So by focusing on the vulnerabilities that are actively running and exposed, we narrow our target from a broad set of potential risks to those that truly matter, those that pose a real threat to our network. And this technique can reduce up to 95% of the noise from vulnerabilities. Now let's navigate to the final section, cloud detection and response, and see how you can detect and respond to threats in real time. Okay, a malicious command has been detected on our attack path. This is what differentiates Sysdig's attack path. We're overlaying real-time detections on top of posture and vulnerability findings. The process tree of this event shows the attack journey from user to process. This XMRig process indicates this is not a normal risk but a crypto mining operation, someone feeding off our resources. So it's time to conduct a live threat investigation. we need to understand the entire attack chain sequence, understand who did what, and take appropriate steps to contain the breach. For that, let's start our investigation process with the events page. Earlier in the demo, we saw how someone compromised privileges in Okta and then pivoted to AWS. We are now in the same cloud region, and we can see the same attack unfolding dangerously in a matter of minutes. Here's the detect malicious command lines event we saw just a moment ago in attack path, but there is a chain of suspicious events surrounding it that need further investigation. Let's dig in to understand what really happened. The attacker uploaded a temporary SSH key to the host, and now we see they were able to move laterally from the cloud to the container and perform crypto mining. They then started a terminal shell in the container. Immediately following that, they downloaded the xmrig package using wget, executing the xmrig from temp, and finally establishing connections to the miner pool. All of this happened in a few minutes, highlighting why we need real-time detection. And with Sysdig, we were able to stitch together cloud logs, Okta events, and correlate it with what's happening inside the container to understand exactly what happened. For further incident response, we can even export to a system capture file in case I need to conduct detailed forensics. Now that we've understood the attack sequence, the key question the SecOps team is looking to answer is what response actions can I take to contain this breach? First, we provide automated actions, options to stop, kill, or pause compromised workloads, as well as notify the right team to take appropriate actions. Second, we can limit the blast radius by enforcing least privilege access at the network level. We can click on the network activities where I have every malicious IP address this workload tried to contact. We can also ask Sysdig to generate a network policy to block all the egress traffic and restrict lateral movement. Finally, we can go a step beyond and prevent this attack from occurring, using container drift policies to block executables that were not in the original container. Now if I tried to download or execute any binary that was not present in the original image, it will be blocked. In addition to container drift, Sysdig also provides hundreds of out-of-the-box policies and rules so you can detect and prevent threats in real time anywhere in the cloud fabric with an end-to-end approach. These policies are based on Falco and span across AWS, GCP, Azure, workloads like containers, Kubernetes, as well as Linux and Windows servers, third-party apps like Okta and GitHub. And these are curated with high confidence by Sysdig's threat research team that continuously maintains and updates policies to keep up with evolving threats. With the power of the cloud behind them, attackers are getting faster and smarter. So are we. So if you're ready to step up your cloud security game, book a personalized demo with one of our experts. Click the link below to get started.